The vast expanse of the Indo-Pacific has long served as a natural moat for the Australian continent, providing a strategic depth that allowed defense planners to rely on the tyranny of distance as a primary security guarantor. However, the rapid modernization of regional naval capabilities has fundamentally altered this calculus. The emergence of the Type 055 destroyer, commissioned by the People's Liberation Army Navy, represents a definitive shift in the maritime balance of power. This vessel is not merely a platform for projecting naval prestige, but a sophisticated command center that challenges the traditional concept of the sea gap. For observers in both Australia and China, understanding the implications of this heavy destroyer requires moving beyond simple hull-to-hull comparisons and examining the complex interplay of denial strategies, long-range precision fires, and the evolution of asymmetric warfare. At the heart of this strategic reassessment sits the Type 055, a vessel that international analysts classify as a cruiser due to its sheer scale and capability. Displacing approximately 13,000 tons, it represents a pinnacle of Chinese naval engineering. The vessel commands respect not only for its size, but for its integrated electronic systems and formidable arsenal. With 112 vertical launch system cells, the Type 055 carries a payload capacity that significantly outstrips the 48 cells found on the Australian Hobart-class destroyers. This disparity in volume allows the Type 055 to deploy a diverse mix of anti-air, anti-submarine, and anti-ship munitions, creating a multi-layered defensive bubble that is notoriously difficult to penetrate. The most significant variable introduced by the Type 055 is the reported integration of the YJ-21 hypersonic anti-ship ballistic missile. With a flight profile capable of reaching speeds between Mach 6 and Mach 10, and an estimated operational range of 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers, the YJ-21 effectively extends the threat radius of the Chinese Navy well beyond the horizon. This capability creates an area denial zone that renders the traditional engagement ranges of Western naval forces obsolete. A surface engagement where an Australian vessel attempts to close the distance with a Type 055 would be tactically unsound, as the Chinese vessel could launch a strike long before the Australian ship could bring its own sensors or weapons to bear. Recognizing this asymmetry, the Australian Defence Force has accelerated a shift in doctrine, moving away from a balanced force structure designed for low-intensity regional stability operations toward a focused strategy of impactful projection. This approach, often likened to the defensive mechanism of an echidna, prioritizes making the continent and its approaches too dangerous and costly for a hostile power to access. The objective is not to match the People's Liberation Army Navy in ship tonnage or fleet numbers, a feat that is industrially unfeasible, but to exploit specific technological advantages to neutralize high-value assets like the Type 055 from relative safety. This counter-strategy relies heavily on multi-domain integration, particularly the synthesis of air power and undersea warfare. The Royal Australian Air Force utilizes the F-35A Lightning II not primarily as a dogfighter, but as an advanced sensor node. In a hypothetical tactical scenario involving a Type 055 operating in the Southern Pacific, the F-35A would likely utilize its stealth characteristics to locate and track the destroyer while remaining outside the detection envelope of the Type 055 radar systems. The aircraft acts as a silent observer, gathering targeting data without revealing its presence or engaging directly. Once the target coordinates are resolved, the strike roll falls to platforms capable of launching long-range munitions, such as the FA-18F Super Hornet, or eventually the Hunter-class frigates. The weapon of choice for this deterrence mission is the AGM-158C long-range anti-ship missile. While the Chinese YJ-21 relies on blistering hypersonic speed and a high-altitude ballistic trajectory to overcome defenses, the Australian-operated long-range anti-ship missile employs a diametrically opposite philosophy. It utilizes stealth technology, autonomous guidance, and a sea-skimming flight profile. These missiles are designed to communicate with one another in flight, coordinating their arrival time and attack vectors to overwhelm the fire control channels of a sophisticated adversary like the Type 055. The strategic logic here is that while the Type 055 has an impressive number of defensive interceptors, its radar horizon against a sea-skimming stealth missile is limited by the curvature of the Earth. By the time the ship detects the incoming salvo, the reaction window is critically short. This highlights a classic contest between Eastern emphasis on kinetic energy and range versus Western emphasis on stealth, networking, and sensor fusion. Below the surface, the equation becomes even more complex. The announcement of the AUKUS partnership and the acquisition of nuclear-powered submarines underscores the Australian determination to maintain a subsurface advantage. Nuclear-powered vessels possess the speed and endurance to shadow high-speed surface groups like those led by a Type 055 for weeks without surfacing. Furthermore, the development of the Ghost Shark, an extra-large autonomous underwater vehicle, introduces a low-cost, expendable risk to any hostile surface fleet. These unmanned drones can lie dormant on the seabed or patrol choke points, forcing an adversary to expend immense resources on anti-submarine warfare. The mere potential presence of such assets forces commanding officers of high-value ships to operate with extreme caution, effectively slowing their advance and limiting their tactical freedom. The procurement of Tomahawk cruise missiles for the Royal Australian Navy further illustrates this doctrinal pivot. These assets provide the capability to strike land-based infrastructure or port facilities that support naval operations, extending the defensive perimeter thousands of kilometers from the Australian coastline. This aligns with the broader recommendations of the Defense Strategic Review, which emphasize the necessity of holding an adversary at risk at a distance. Ultimately, the interaction between the Type 055 and Australian defense capabilities serves as a microcosm of the broader geopolitical tension in the Indo-Pacific. The technical excellence of the Type 055 has acted as a catalyst, accelerating military modernization and deepening alliance structures such as AUKUS. For the Australian public, the narrative is not one of aggression, but of necessary adaptation to a security environment where technological stagnation invites vulnerability. For the Chinese observer, the Type 055 stands as a testament to industrial capacity and a legitimate tool for protecting sea lines of communication. The prevailing dynamic is therefore one of mutual deterrence. The presence of the Type 055 in the region signals that the waters are no longer an uncontested thoroughfare. Conversely, The Australian adoption of stealth missiles, nuclear propulsion technology, and autonomous systems signals that any attempt to leverage naval mass for coercion will face a sophisticated, lethal, and high-cost response. Peace in the region relies on the continued maintenance of this delicate technical equilibrium, ensuring that the cost of conflict always outweighs the potential gains for all parties involved.